Okay, amazing art students, we're nearing the end of the flamingo. By now you have created the sky in the background, the marsh or lagoon in the foreground, and here in the middle ground you've completed your grass or weeds or reeds, whatever they may be. Please make sure now that you've filled everything in before you move on to this last step of painting the flamingo. Please don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly like an example that I've done, or even like someone else's at your table, because each look a little different. You can see in this example with this grass that I did in the background, it's much lighter. It does, the grass is a little bit taller in some places. It's a little bit messier. I had to use a lot of water because my paint was, getting a little bit too thick. So don't have the expectation that it needs to look exactly like mine. If it doesn't, that's even better. These are just opportunities for you to try out lots of different painting tricks so that you can use them on other projects. It's not critical, and if you're not happy with this, you can even start over again. So starting on the flamingo, however, what we want to do is begin with white paint. So I'm going to get a good amount of white and go ahead and put it on the flamingo's body. And I'm actually going to now just add just a teeny tiny bit of red. It's always easier for me to start small, so you can see that small little bit of red there that I have is really going to go a long way. I'm going to blend that in right now with the white that I already have on the paper and spread that around. Now, if yours is a little bit too pink, like this is sort of like a cotton candy kind of pink, you can always add a little bit of yellow. I like to do that because it gives a little bit of a coral tint to the flamingo's feathers. And it's a little bit too much yellow. So I'm going to go back and add a little bit of white and red to get that pink back in there. So I'm going to spread that out some more, get a good generous supply of the white going. All the way around, just covering up my lines, coming as close to the edge as I can. Some of my grass overlapped into the feathers of the flamingo. That's okay. If your paint is still wet and it starts to blend a little bit, and so you have a little bit of black around the edges, try not to worry too much about it. It'll actually give it a little bit of a shadow around the edges, and you'll probably like that. We'll also put some finishing touches on it that are just going to give us a little bit of emphasis as to the shape and give it just a little bit more of a finished look. Although what we're going for here is not necessarily a completely polished and perfectly drawn and painted flamingo. Of course, we're just learning some strategies to use as we continue with other projects. Go ahead and try to put a little more yellow, but not as much yellow this time. See if I can get a nice coral that I like. I do like the way that's turning out. Okay, and then I just need to get right up here around the head, and I'm going to leave that part by the eye. That's the next step for us. Just let me see if I can match this to the color that I already have on my flamingo. From the very, very pink to the coral. Okay, maybe just a hint of yellow. I might be being too precise here. Okay, I'm happy with the way that looks right now. And the next thing I'm going to do is clean my brush really well and go ahead. You want to double check too. You can just wipe it on the paper to make sure that it's what you want. I'm going to add some red around the eye. Now this is the lesser flamingo, so if you decide that you're maybe a little nervous about this, you're not sure if you want to do it this way, you can try it out on a piece of scrap paper to see if you like it. And if you do, do it. If not, you can also look up the bill of other flamingos and see, what theirs look like. But the lesser flamingo is sort of a red, and then it gradually fades to a black at the end. So I'm going to put in a little bit of black. That was probably more than I wanted to use, but we're going to deal with it. And there. Again, if you want to try this out first, that's okay too. This is probably blacker than it needs to be, but I'm going to stick with it for now. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and paint the legs. Now, if you followed directions, you probably painted over the legs that we drew. And you can probably still see them, although on some of my other ones I've painted a little bit too dark and I haven't been able to see them. But that's okay. You know what they look like, and hopefully you left this part of the leg sort of visible so you have a little bit of a guideline there. So what I'm going to do is take the black and go ahead and recreate that body that we drew, or the beginning of the leg that we drew together. And then I'm going to need to not have red. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. And I'm going to keep the brush really up on its tip. In fact, I may just need to change to a more thin, yep, I'm going to change to a much thinner brush. I'm going to use this one just so I can go a little bit slower and paint less of a thick line for the leg, and keep it right up on the top. Now, if your water is still wet, this black paint might drag a little bit. If it does, that's okay. You may just have to go just a little bit slower and paint a little bit thinner. Okay. And I'm going to get down to about where I think the bottom of the leg was. Oops. Okay. And you don't have to draw the feet in if you don't want to. And let's go ahead and add that second leg. I'm trying to keep it about the same thickness because I can see my lines up at the top, but as it nears the bottom, I can't see them as well. So I'm just going to do the best I can, because in the end, no one's really going to be looking at their proportions. And as long as you have the length of the legs about as tall as the body of the flamingo, it's going to look all right. If they're a little too short, your flamingo might end up looking kind of like a duck. So you just want to have it about the same length as the body. And then you can either, finish that foot there, or you can have it, just sort of disappeared underneath the water. It doesn't have to be visible. Okay, I'm going to go back to that in just a second, but what I want to do is finish one little thing around the body. I talked about this earlier, that we would use a thin brush to go around and outline the flamingo's body, just sort of where the two colors are meeting. And I'm trying to stay close to the original line that I drew, but this gives me a great opportunity to cover up where, I have a little bit of pink sticking out, or I have a little bit of white showing here on the corners. On the edges of the body. So it gives me a chance to just finish that off. And you'll definitely want a thin brush for this. So if everyone at your table is using them and you have to wait, you can always go on to something else. Or I recommend that you go up and choose some of the, look in some of the other cups that aren't being used, and go ahead and grab a thin tipped brush out of those. And then you won't have to wait to complete this. Okay, so I'm going to go right around, right around there. Going a little bit too fast, but even if you make a mistake like that, since the bill is black, I can just sort of extend it and make it look like it's a little bit longer. It's not going to be something that I'm too worried about. And whichever way is easiest for you, whether it's better for you to turn the paper around to get to what you're doing, so that, or if it's better for you to reach over. Right now my flamingo is still wet, so I'm going to try to keep turning the painting around so that I don't accidentally dip my wrist or hands or anything into the flamingo's body. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way around. Okay. All right, I'll finish the rest of that in just a minute, but I want to go ahead and add some white feathers to the chest. So I know this part is unfinished, but I'm not going to spend any more time on the video doing that part. I'll just go ahead and clean my brush really, really well, especially since I had that black. I want to double check and make sure that I don't still have it. Okay, that's much better. I'm going to grab a little bit of white, put a few white feathers here around the chest. And I'll add a few here around the back. And I'm also going to add red feathers, but right before I do that, I'm gonna come down here to this part of the water where the foot is. Make sure you can see that. And add just a little ripple in the water, and it's going to be sort of a circular shape. Really not even a circle, it's going to be more of an ellipse. And I'm just going to come around here just to give the effect of the bird is waiting. Oops, hold on. Make sure you can really see it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just make it, kind of thin and subtle, and you're all set. After that, I'm going to go ahead and add the red feathers here to the tail, and those are just going to be just really small details. And before you finish, just make sure that you have everything the way you want it. I know that I have to go back and add black around the outside, but other than that, I am okay with it. Actually, I could also go back and add some black right here around the eye. I think that looks pretty good too. Okay, take your time and good luck.